family of 7 children, including me, 5 sisters and 2 brothers. As our sister mentioned, Sister Jabez, my eldest brother, whose name is Victor Ispahani, I'm his second sister. My brother went to be with the Lord about 2 months back. And I'm living, just to go give you a short, background. I'm living here in Vienna for more than 40 years after marriage. And it has been wonderful to see how the Lord keeps his children all over the world. And I thank you all very much. And I would just like to give you a brief background of my parents. I do not come from a family where my parents were born and brought up into any Christian home. I come from a family where my father is a Muslim and my mother from a Brahmin background. And my grandmother in 1952, from a very rigid Hindu Brahmin home, came to know the Lord in 1952, and followed by my mother, who came to know the Lord in 1960. So after that, we all who were, in Hyderabad, we are 7 children, as I said, and mother's one and only struggle was that she wanted to see all her 7 children know the Lord. And that was a big challenge for mother, living with my father, who was not a committed Christian. So I, being the third, I came to know the Lord through my grandmother and my mother, who went to Hebron. And because of our faith, my father would not allow us to go to Hebron because he found it to be very rigid, the society, that you're not supposed to go to watch movies, you can't go for any entertainments, parties. So he thought it was total fanaticism and that we were living in a world of fanaticism. So this was a very big challenge to my mother, but her prayers and the prayers of my grandmother continued to keep us on in the faith. My father had given me permission, along with my older sister, to attend a youth camp. And at that time, I was a young teenager, maybe 14, 15 years. And I was allowed to go, especially permitted by Brother Buxing, because he said only young people from 15 onwards can go. But since he knew our family, and Brother Buxing was like a spiritual father to us, he allowed me. And it is in that youth camp that I came to know the Lord through the ministry of Brother Zach Punan, who gave the message in the evening. I was very troubled in my heart because till then I thought I was living a good life and everything seemed very good for me. But the Lord made me aware of the fact that no matter how good I am, that the plan of salvation is for me, and the need of being one who has sinned and who's a sinner in God's sight. I needed God's forgiveness and accept his plan of salvation. The message that day was on John 6. And the only one verse that stayed with me was verse 37, which says, "He that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out." I felt very troubled. And that night, I didn't have dinner. I went straight into my bed. And I was looking out up in the sky. And that night, as I looked up, I saw in the darkness, I saw 3 crosses far away somewhere. I thought I'm somewhere in dreaming. I got up from my bed and I opened my Bible to read. And there was a light that was shown on this verse. He that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out. So I looked to the Lord and I said, Here, Lord, I come to you, a sinner, and I do need your mercy. Forgive me for all that I have done. And thank you that you took this burden of my sin on the cross of Calvary. And that day was such a joyous day, the next day, that I had experienced the peace of the Lord. And I went about being very happy in the camp. I will in no wise cast down. Thank you. Yes. So, having gone through this wonderful experience of coming into this relationship, of knowing the Lord as my personal Savior, not anymore as God of just the God of the Creator or the God of the universe, but He is my Savior, my Lord, and my God. And 3 days later, one of the sisters came to me and said, I heard that you have come to know the Lord. Would you like to give your testimony? I was a bit surprised and shocked because I was way too young. I thought I wouldn't be able to say something. But the Lord gave me such wonderful freedom and liberty and a great joy to share my testimony. I did it. And afterwards, I went to my Sunday school teacher, Sister Nellie. I said, Auntie, I have now become a Christian, a real Christian. And she laughed at me. And she said, what makes you say that you're a real Christian? I said, because I've seen how sinful I am. And I saw the cross on which my sin had to be carried. So she said, oh, my child, I'm so glad for this wonderful experience you had. And she gave me a verse and said, from Hebrews, she said, I think it's Hebrews chapter 6, he said, in blessings I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thee. So I said to her, why are you giving me such a beautiful promise? And she laughed again and she said, the Lord has got a great plan for you. And He is going to bless you. And He's going to take you somewhere far away. I didn't believe it. And so from there on, my life, my Christian life started. And we as a family went through a time of persecution because my father was not a committed Christian. So every time we had to go to church, to the assembly on a Sunday, it was a big fight. We had to go at a particular time and come back. And if at any time I asked my father to go and attend the young young people's meeting on a Saturday evening, he would say, no, that's not for you because you come late and you are a young girl. You have to be home before the sun sets down. So I said, okay. One week I asked my mother, I said, let me go. I'll come back on time. I'll go to the bus stop as soon as the meeting is over. I'll get back home early. I did that. And it was just 6:30 when I reached home. My father was sitting out and he asked me not to enter the house. I felt very hurt about it. I said, why don't you want me to come inside? He said, because you have not obeyed me. The sun has set, you're a young girl. You will not stay tonight here. My mother came out and she said, if you would say that, then I'll have to walk out with her. Where do we go? So then I said, Mommy, stand there. I was outside the door and Mom was inside the door. My father instructed my mother, don't go out even 1 foot you should not put out. My mother went inside, put on her sandals and said, I'm going. And we both went to my older brother, to Victor's place. And we prayed there. Early morning the next day, we went to Brother Buxing. He prayed. And Brother Buxing said, don't worry, Sister Mala. The Lord is with you. And to my mother. And then he said, I'll pray about it. The next day, brother called on one of the believers who was a police officer in Hebron. And he said, brother will take you, accompany you. Maybe you can take your clothes, because I needed my clothes and I was not allowed to come in. So I went with one of the brothers, accompanied with my older brother, Brother Victor, my mother. Went inside. My father was there. And he saw this big police officer, and my father greeted him in a very nice manner. And he said, this is a family matter. You should not interfere. Will you please go out? He said, I'm a police officer. I've just come to protect the sister. I am from Hebron. So he said, it all the more tells me that you should not enter the house. And he took one of his sandals and slippered my brother. And then my brother stepped back. And then I went back. And then the brother, who was a police officer, said, sister, tell me, what do you need? I said, I only need my box of clothes. That's all. And my father said, you will not take the box. I said, Daddy, please. I need to go back to school because I was teaching and I'm going back to work. The summer holidays have come to an end. I need to leave. Please let me go. He said, no. And then after the police officer pleaded, he gave me the box. And I took the box and went to my brother. And after that, I traveled back to the place where I was working as a teacher. These were experiences that we as a family faced. My mother faced a lot of persecution. Together, where oftentimes we were threatened of our lives. We were not allowed to pray or to read the Bible. Oftentimes, Dad had said if he saw any Bible at home, he would just make a bonfire of it. So what we used to do is very small Bibles. We had it either in our purse or we had it somewhere hidden. And we had our room where we would change as girls. There we would kneel down quickly, pray, and read maybe 2 or 3 verses, and then open the door on the pretext as if we got dressed. So this is how, these were the circumstances through which God had strengthened our faith. And that's how we were able to go from strength to strength and from faith to faith. So I was very young in my faith, and of course, the Lord, a year later, after I came to know the Lord, I got baptized. Brother Buxing gave me my grandmother gave me a beautiful Bible where Brother Buxing had written some beautiful verses for me and called me in and said after my baptism, the Lord has chosen you, Sister Mala, in the furnace of affliction, but you will come out of it, because when it is a furnace, it is meant to purify. These were things that stayed in my own heart as I continue to walk through my Christian life. And later on, The battle became still tough with my father. He threatened to kill us. He threatened to kill my mother. On a few occasions, he threatened to kill family members. And so a period of 20 years the Lord used in our lives through my father, who had rejected God. Coming from a Muslim background, he came from a very good background where my father's father was a very well-known judge in Hyderabad. And so the family was very well known. Also from my mother's side, my grandfather, my mother's father was a well-known, a very rich, affluent man. And we grew up knowing non-Christian family members on both sides, both my father, the Muslim family, and my mother, the Hindu family. But over the years, the Lord was so gracious through all those struggles. My mother's and my grandmother's life of faith was a big challenge to all of us that had brought all of us to know the Lord in a personal way. As you have heard, my eldest brother has gone to be with the Lord, served the Lord with Brother Buxing for more than 10 years. So in this way, I can say today, wherever God has kept, He's kept us by His grace and His grace alone. Now, the question of settling the family, the children, especially the girls, is a very big question for Dad. So the first two, brother and sister, got married making their own choice. I was the next one. I told my mother, I said, you can choose the person or let it be. I mean, I'm not very interested in marriage. But if you ever think, then you can pray, mommy. Because I was serving the Lord. I was a youth counselor. And I used to take a lot of youth meetings besides my work as a teacher. So I was very satisfied and happy. There was a period in my life when I went to Bangalore, and there I served the Lord among the missionaries in Nilgiris. I started a school for them, and I headed the school in a very, very remote village, an English medium school. So where my life was concerned, I didn't feel or see any need of marriage. And I was very sure that I will remain a single. So I asked the Lord, I said, I'm so happy here. Keep me the way I am, and I will serve you. Till the time had come when the Lord started speaking to me through different verses in my daily portion. One of them, Acts 7:3, thou shalt leave thy country and thy kindred and go to a land that I will show thee. I was a bit terrified with this verse. So I started praying and I said, Lord, I'm really not interested in marriage. Do you want me to get out of my country and kindred? Then tell me why. I have a lot of work here to do. Let me do it. And passing Bangalore Assembly, Brother Amrit Raj came and greeted me one Sunday. And he said, I guess you are Brother Ispahani's sister. I said, yes, brother. He said, I know Thomas Samuel, with whom you're working, and he's a very dear brother. And I heard you are working there. It's great, sister. But I don't think beautiful girls like you should stay single. And I said, brother, if God wills, I'm sure I can stay. He said, no, I'm going to pray for you. So after that, I didn't want to meet Brother Amrit Raj anymore. So I tried, if I would go to my mission place, that's quiet corner, if I would go there, then I tried to see how not to enter the assembly. But I had no other choice because everyone would come to know that I've traveled and I'm going. So Brother Amritraj insisted that I always go and see him. And having done this, my brother in 1980 lost his kidney. I was traveling back on a train for the operation to be there in Hyderabad. At that time, I was reading in the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, which said, like, two are better than one. And as soon as from chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes 1 to 10, I read, and I didn't want to read anymore because I said, wow, this is again talking about, how nice it is to have, to enter into marriage maybe, which is not meant for me. And so I closed the Bible. And the next day, I said, Lord, I've been disobedient to you. Forgive me. I didn't read the chapter because I'm so afraid. I don't want to get married. Now, through all this, after my conversion and after coming to know the Lord in a personal way, I had a longing in my heart to grow very close to God, to get intimate with God. I was working in a school way out in Orissa, and the travel to my school from where I was residing, and my mother was there and my sister, we all had to travel 45 minutes on a bus to get to our school. So the bus route had many bends on this hill. So every morning as I sat in the bus, I asked the Lord, speak to me through your word. I want to get to know you more. Show me your will. What do you want me to do? So there was one very beautiful and precious lesson the Lord told me. He said, I won't be giving you a blueprint of your life. If you read the Bible, that it will say automatically, you, Mala, will be getting married with the age of 24 and you will be living in a foreign country. There's no such blueprint. I said, I know, Lord, there's no blueprint for me, but I want to be close to you. So the Lord said, just as this driver who drives this bus comes to the end of a bend and only then knows how the road goes, when he stands there coming to the end, then he gets to know the next route. So it is in your life. When you come to the end of this particular thing, then I will lead you further. Then he gave me Psalm 32:8. He said, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. So I said, okay, Lord, I thank you for this precious lesson. So help me to wait till I come to the end of the road and then get to see what you will do next. So from there on, went back to Hyderabad, started working as a teacher in one of the local schools, and went through this experience of my father rejecting a living God, and the whole family suffered. Much of the suffering was my brother, older brother and sister, both married quite young. And I was the third one. And after the marriage of the first two, there was a gap of 8 years. So this gap of 8 years took us through immense suffering again, because Dad was not happy since my brother and sister married Christians. He wanted that one of us should marry a Muslim. So when it came to me, he suggested someone who was a very well-known Muslim man. My mother said, I will not let the children marry Muslims or Hindus. They should marry Christians. So dad again there was a lot of conflict there. But all the battles that my mother fought in life were only on her knees. So she would go to the Lord, lock her room up. She was a working mother. She was a career mother, my mother, raised 7 children. So she would lock herself up coming back from school. And the first thing she would do is spend an hour in time before the Lord, just crying and pleading. And it is her prayers today, all 7 of us, of which 2 are gone to be with the Lord. Wherever God has placed us, it is His mercy and grace. So when it came to my marriage, it was the first marriage that would be like an arranged marriage. So my father came to know that there would be someone from Bangalore, and he was not happy about it. There was always this conflict. Why wouldn't you consider marrying someone who is not a Christian? Traveling in 1980 to Hyderabad, from Bangalore to Hyderabad, to attend and to be there for my brother's operation. When I saw this verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I was a bit perturbed. And then again, I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, tell me what is your will in all this. Are you telling me that you want me to leave my country? Again, the same verse, which was in Acts 7:3, I saw in Genesis, the same verse, because this is the verse to Abraham, the Lord tells. So again, I was very disturbed in my mind. I said, I don't know. Would the Lord want me to leave my country? I'm so happy serving the Lord. I'm so happy working here. I'm so happy with my parents, especially my mother, who's such a big help spiritually in all ways, a very godly mother. I said, I don't know. Would the Lord take me away from here? This was a very big question to me. And I was in these thoughts of mine. I sought the Lord. And that year, the proposal had come from Bangalore, from Brother Amrit Raj. And in June of 1980, I saw Brother Amrit Raj very shortly at the assembly. And he said, God has some other plans for you, sister. I said, like marriage, brother? Because I don't know if I'll marry. And he said, I have advice for you. Maybe you should lose some weight. And I said to him, I said, brother, for the sake of marrying, I will not lose any weight. And he laughed. And he said, you seem to be very strong in your thinking. I said, yes. I don't think God would want me to lose. I mean, I was not fat, but I was properly well built. So he said, well, I'll pray that God will change your heart. I felt a bit uncomfortable with that. I went back. No sooner the proposal had come, letters of exchange, and the fact that the family would come and see me. And at this point, I was very much afraid. Although living here, it's now more than 41 years I'm living here in Vienna. And Brother Bak Singh was informed about the proposal by Brother Amrit Raj. And till things came to a settlement from the time it started, it hardly was 1 to 2 months. And my father was not at all happy, because he said, he's a man who's come from abroad. We do not know anything. I don't want to give you away, like a blind man. Could you not wait for 1 year? Have the engagement and then correspond with each other, and then you can go ahead with it. But somehow there was a lot of pressure from the boy's family for whatever reason it is. My older brother, Victor, agreed to this, saying it was God's will. There was a final decision that had to be made before giving a yes. I went to the Lord that night and I said, Lord, you speak to me through your word. My portion was from the life of Joseph. And I thought to myself, so do I have to leave my hometown? Please, Lord, don't do that, I said. Next day, early morning, my brother came, Victor, and he said, I've prayed for you through the night. I was also a bit restless, Mala, he said. I prayed. I said, Anna, tell me, what is it? What has the Lord spoken to you? He said, to the life of Joshua. I said, so you are saying that I should leave my country again? Yes, explore a new country for the Lord is what I would look at, he said. And from the time the proposal had come till it had settled down, until the marriage took place, it was 10 days. So here I married someone whom I saw only 10 days before marriage. And I was still, I had my fears, but then before the final word was given, I went to my mother and I said, give me an opportunity to talk to this man, young man, once before I say yes. And she said, okay. She asked the boy's family and said, my daughter wants to talk to the boy. Would you allow it? I said, yes. I said, I want to ask you one thing. You've come accompanied with your mother and with your brother. Now, is it because of your mother and brother that you are going to marry me? And do you have an answer for that? And he said, honestly speaking, in one way, yes. To please my mother, I came. But this morning, the Lord spoke to me from Proverbs 19:21 or 21:19. He said, there are many devices in a man's heart, but it is the thoughts of the Lord that will be established. So he said, I believe the Lord has a plan. Whether you say yes or no, I'll leave this place. He had come from Vienna at that time. So, yes, thank you, brother. So I was now waiting. And then my brother said, he said, what is the other thing that is troubling you? I said, honestly speaking, the man doesn't really impress me. He looks quite old. I said, and haggard. And he said, my brother Victor said, so you are going to look at the outward appearances and base your choice? I said, not really, but at least the man should be appealing, isn't it? And he said, that's all the outward appearance. Do what the Lord wants you to do. So I can go back to my own prayer that I prayed. I said, Lord, I want to be close to you. I want to get to know you, your word, right at the beginning of my conversion. And so as I went through this process of making my decision in marriage, I know that the Lord makes no mistake. It is his will that I sought for, and the Lord kept me in his will and brought me to a country where I did not know the language, the German language you had to learn. It was not as easy as coming down to UK, America, or Australia, Canada, any of these places where you know the English language and it's easy for you to go on. So suddenly I realized, wow, Austria, Vienna, language is new, people are new. The man to whom you're married is new, is a stranger. Weather is new, the food is new, clothes are different. So I thought to myself, just before marriage, my mother-in-law to be said, you have to change to European dress. I said, that can never happen because I love wearing my Indian sari. I wouldn't be able to do that. So this way, there was a lot of conflicting situations in my own life that I was battling with. But as I was leaving the country at the Mumbai airport, 1980, August, I said, Lord, give me one word. Speak to me for once. You've spoken to me all this while. But one more time before I leave my home, my people, and everyone, give me the assurance that you are in it. The Lord spoke to me from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13 and verse 5. The last part of this verse says, have I not said unto thee, I will never, never leave thee, nor forsake thee. This brought a great comfort to me, that the Lord is such a personal God, so intimate, that at the airport, I cried in my prayer on my knees for more than an hour. And I said, Lord, it is enough if you are with me. My parents won't go with me. My brothers or sisters won't go with me, but you are with me. It is looking back at this very, very difficult path of my life of 41 years here. Though all else will leave you, your God who loves you will never leave you, never forsake you. And at any time, in times of my sorrow and pain, when I looked back, the Lord just brought this verse right in front of my eyes. And he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And so he took me through this beautiful path of obedience, but it's not going to be easy. The path of obedience is the path of glory. The Lord Jesus himself went through the path of obedience, but it was the path where he was put on the cross through pain, but it was the path of glory for him. This was the message that Brother Amritraj gave at the time of my wedding and said, sister, the Lord has got a great work for you. He's taking you there for a very good purpose. And he was very personally involved with arranging the marriage and came personally from Hyderabad, from Bangalore to Hyderabad to give the message. Of course, 1985, our dear brother Amritraj went to be with the Lord. But he was a man who was to me a fatherly figure. He was. And Brother Baksin. So I'm thankful to God that he's kept me through those years of more than half of my life in a country which is not mine. But only one thing, what I have come to realize is when we are kept in God's will and in the place that God would want us to be, There is no lack of any kind. I will tell you from there on. I came here 8 long years. I had my 3 children within 5 years of marriage. And I was all alone here, battling with the language. I used to sit down to learn the language, listening to the local TV channel, the news items in German. That's how I went on. And I said, Lord, you brought me here. Would you want me to be working? I would like to work. And oftentimes, my husband used to say, God didn't bring you to work here. Your work is at home. You stay at home and raise the children. I said, okay. But to everything, I went on my knees before the Lord. I said, Lord, you brought me here. Ruth 2:12. It is under his wings I've come. So you will protect me. You will provide for me, isn't it? I did not know how I would get a job here. 8 years had passed. The Lord had opened doors where no man could open. And so this is the thing I can say, that under whose wings are those wings that I have come to trust? He kept me. When it came about my job, I said, how would I go about with my job? I have 3 children and I wanted to be a teacher. I had got an opportunity to work at the UN, but I refused because I would have to work in an office and I was a qualified teacher. I had my experience in Hyderabad already, 10 years I worked as a teacher. So I thought to myself, how would this happen? But as I say, when the Lord puts you in the right place, He will open the right doors. He will bring in the right people. There will be no lack of any resources in our lives. Even if there are, I'll tell you, the Lord helps us. So I was very sure that in coming here, it was in God's divine will. And so I said, Lord, would it be a wrong thing if I would ask you to give me a job here? I got a job unknowingly. Someone from the church called me to say, there's a vacancy for an English teacher in the open college. Would you like to work? I said, I'll give it a try. The first day of my school, there were about 35 students. And I spoke only in English. The entire class were disappointed. At the end of 1.5 hours, they went back to the principal and said, we don't want to attend this class because no German is spoken. So the principal said, you would not expect anyone to speak the German language in an English class. You will continue, and if you don't want to, there's nothing we can do. And I felt very unhappy. I came back home. I said, Lord, do you want me to continue? And from there on, the Lord made his way clear to me that my coming here was not a mistake. It was in his will. And not long ago after that, I was offered a government job as a government teacher. I qualified myself, giving certain exams at the teachers training college here, but all of them in the German language, where I did not even study the German language. I learned my German language through watching the news items on TV. And so I said, Lord, open the door for me if you want me to go into a school job. The Lord opened. There was one lady who came up to me at a time when I was going through very deep, uh, deep sorrows in my own life. I had broken my hand, slipped on ice. I was completely isolated. I gave myself up to prayer for 3 months, to fasting and prayer. And it was at that time the Lord opened this door for me. Through this time, after my hand broke, the Lord opened the door of a government job. So what I want to say here is that when God calls, he makes no mistake. And when I sought the Lord to be close to him and to know him more in a more intimate way, the Lord revealed himself in different ways, in different circumstances of my life. So I can tell you, dear sisters, wherever God places, this is a testimony I can give for myself. In 40 years, 41 years of my life here, there has never been a day where I can ever say that there was a lack in my life. Never. Never. And that's the way the Lord keeps us, when we are obedient to him. I was afraid of coming to Europe because I couldn't give up eating my gongura chutney, my pandu pachadi chutney. I always loved only eating the Andhra pickles with rice. I was not a fan of eating any meat. And when the question of coming to Europe was, my father said, she's the only daughter who won't eat bread and jam. That's for the Europeans, but that's not for Mala. So I was so convinced that my coming here was not in God's plan. But when we submit to the Lord and we seek to obey him, then that is a different path of great blessing that the Lord brings into our lives. And this is what I can say. Being obedient to the Lord doesn't in any way mean that our life is going to be very smooth. No, it could be a path of suffering, but it's a path of blessing. I will tell you that. Because today, wherever God has kept me, it is his mercy and it is a path of blessing. Because it is the blessing of the Lord that makes us rich. It doesn't make us poor. And riches doesn't mean the material riches of this world. To me, it is the spiritual riches. I have gone through an absolute wilderness experience in my Christian life here because I have not found any church like the way I grew in Hebron. But the Lord from time to time brought in people, and the church that I am, the free evangelical churches that I go to, I mean, it's nothing compared to what I think. I don't know if any one of you know how the church life here is. It's very, very different. It's always subject to only 1.5 hours. And it's got a very different way of doing things. We don't have any fellowship like, like the way CBF is or even Hebron Fellowship is. We don't have. And that's what I say. God does things, for we may not know, as Corrie ten Boom says in one of her poems, we can only see the pattern when it is still being done from the surface, from outside. But then when from outside, we can't make out how this is going to be. But when you look at it, turning it over, then you see the beautiful pattern it is. So it is, I think, in my own life, as I see, I've raised 3 children here. God is a very merciful God. All 3 of them know the Lord. That's all I asked for. Because this was also, what my mother said. And among the 7 of us, I was the first one to leave my country and go away to a foreign country, which I never wanted. And this was my last choice. I would always tell that this would be my last choice. But always remember, being in God's will, that is the safest place. And that is the place of blessing. And today, I have no regrets that God has, done this to me. With this, I would like to move on to a very short message that God has put to my heart, on my heart, just to continue as His children. It is just not knowing the Lord, but it's also asking the Lord to help us grow in His wisdom, His knowledge. And that comes from a very, very intimate and personal relationship with the Lord. That's what in my life, my walk with the Lord all these years of 55 years, I can say that the intimacy with God comes with the way we keep our relationship with the Lord. And that is through His word, in prayer, in fellowship, and serving Him. But His wisdom is the most important thing that I have seen as I raised my 3 children here. I often ask the Lord for wisdom. I had all the knowledge maybe, but I saw that there was a lack of wisdom in my own life. So I asked the Lord often. He said, James 1:5, ask if you lack wisdom, and it will be given to you. So I said, dear Lord, I'm asking you for wisdom to raise my 3 children. How would you want me to do? So as I saw this lack of wisdom in my own life to raise my children, I said, Lord, help me. And so the Lord, from time to time, in disciplining the children's lives, oftentimes the Lord would check with me to say, if you are angry, don't beat the children in your anger. And in anger, don't discipline their lives. And this is sometimes very hard because you're frustrated as a young mother. You want to do something. But then when the Lord spoke to me that we are not supposed to provoke our children, I said, Lord, give me wisdom. To have the knowledge of the world, knowledge comes by reading, by listening, and by knowing. Knowing is knowledge. Knowledge is knowing. That's it. But what about wisdom? Until and unless I had the wisdom from God, given to me by God, I could never put this knowledge to any use in my life. And so I said, Lord, give me that wisdom. As you see children grow, entering into teenage years and into adulthood, into making careers, there can be a lot of things that can go wrong because of lack of wisdom. There are conflicts. There are things that come and go that stay. And through all that, I said, Lord, give me wisdom. James 3:17, I claimed as one of the promises. I said, the Lord said, the wisdom that comes from above. is what? It is first of all pure. And the second aspect to this wisdom is peace. And another aspect to this wisdom is gentleness. And it's easy to be entreated full of mercy and good fruits. And it says without partiality, without hypocrisy. So when the Lord gave me this verse, I claimed it and I said, Lord, the wisdom that is from above is pure. But you say it's gentle. How can I be gentle? Oftentimes, or not oftentimes, but sometimes. I'm a human being. I showed my frustration, but it ought to be gentle. So with all the knowledge of being a teacher and imparting all the knowledge to students, it doesn't help me. I do not know what God-given wisdom is to put this knowledge to proper use. This is where I was very much challenged in my Christian life and faith. This is a word I would love to pass on to our dear sisters wherever you are. As you are in the midst of struggles in life, as you continue on as career women, raising the family, being obedient to what God would want you to be obedient. Ask for God's wisdom, because that is the only wisdom that helps us, because dealing with teenage children is never going to be easy, even with adults. You say, the older the children grow, so much the mother's heart aches. When the children are young, here that's a proverb that you hear, when children are young, the mother's arms ache. But when the children grow old, the mother's heart aches because of the decisions they make. But ask God's wisdom. And even this time, I mean, this is not going to be easy, but I was reading a passage from the book of Psalms, which was my daily portion, 35 from verses 11 to 18. Psalm 35 verses 11 to 18. Okay. Psalm 35. And they laid charge of things that I knew not. Okay. It goes on from 11 to verse 18, 12. They rewarded evil for good, the spoiling of my soul rewarded. But as for me, when they were sick, it was sackcloth. I humbled my soul, but then my prayer returned into my own bosom. Yes. I behaved myself as though I'd been a friend or brother. I'd bowed down heavily, mourned for his mother. But in my adversity, they rejoiced, gathered themselves together, gathered themselves together against me. They did not. They did tear me and seize me. With a hypocritical mockery and feasts, gnashed upon me with their teeth. How long wilt thou look upon me? Is what the psalmist cried. And it says that verse 18 says, I will give thee thanks in the great congregation, and I will praise thee among the people. David is giving an account of what he's been going through, from opposition to unanswered prayers. He's been met with heavy opposition, not just from outside, it was from inside, from within the family. He was faced with unanswered prayers. But he says in verse 18, it's very beautiful. He says, I will give thanks unto thee. So I will give thee thanks in the great congregation, and I will praise thee among much people. This is our privilege that God gives. Through difficult times that we go through are the only times where we can come out to praise and to thank the Lord. This was the psalmist's experience. This was my portion yesterday. I felt very comforted how the Lord had comforted me with this beautiful, with these beautiful thoughts, where it is met, with opposition, unanswered prayers, failures of all kind. You may have made a mistake. There you get laughed by people, by your own family. Ha ha, see what has happened. But stay with a heart that will be thankful to God in all these circumstances of life, because the Lord doesn't leave his children at any time. As I say, when I look back, it's wonderful to see how the Lord took me through these years, giving me this verse from Hebrews 13:5. To be content with what you have. For he says, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. The Lord has given me wonderful opportunities to share his word here. Right at the beginning, when I came, I was very closely associated with the OM work and OM workers. But I had the privilege of traveling to Catholic churches and to give my testimony there as to how the Lord met me. And I felt very humbled that God had given me this opportunity. In one way, I said, Lord, I don't have a Hebron fellowship here. These churches, I have to go there sitting for 1.5 hours. There is no worship time as such. It is worship is only singing. But God kept giving me the opportunity. And the Lord said, you are very well fed in your home country and in Hebron. Now you have to come out to give something of yourself. I was very much closely knit with women's Bible studies from the very beginning that I came here. And oftentimes, I had the pastor's wife come and pick me up with my 3 children for Bible study. And I had seen a few of these women smoking. And I thought to myself, how can you call yourself a Christian when you smoke? And you say we are coming together for Bible studies. And so this is the way my life of faith was put through great test and went through challenges. Not only that, I also heard women ask me, now when you say yours is an arranged marriage, how can you, it is criminal. How can you ever marry a man 10 days after seeing him? I said, it's the Lord's will, isn't it? They said, we don't understand what God's will is. I said, because you have put your likes first before God, not what God likes of you, or what God would like you to have or like you to do. It is my like, Lord, this is what it is. Can you do this for me? This is the man I love. and you please bless him. Whether he's a Christian or a non-Christian, doesn't matter. Just bless him and give him to me. That's it. So I said, it was a simple truth, but I didn't realize at that time when I said it. And later on, one of the ladies remarked, she asked me to give me an answer to this question. How can you live with a man whom you've seen? How can you marry a man whom you've seen only 10 days before marriage? And is it a happy marriage? I said, it may not be happy. Happiness comes from the happenings of it, I said. But the joy of the Lord is our strength. And she was very shocked. And I said, this is simply that maybe in our culture, Indian, Asian culture, we learn to love after marriage. But in the Western culture, you love before marriage. So I was sometimes trying to be maybe critical, or maybe the answers were not correct. But I think it is not love before marriage or after marriage. When we know the Lord, the love of the Lord is shed abroad in our hearts. That is the underlying principle and truth given to us in the plan of salvation. Without love, without the love of the Lord, I could never stand before you today to testify to God's love, His goodness, His mercies. I could never do it. But to me, it was for sure and only the love of the Lord that bound me together in this love. So no matter what my circumstances were, according to Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, it is not looking around at our circumstances that seems so terrible, but it says very clearly, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed with so great a cloud of witness, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated down at the right hand of the throne of God. So it's very clear to us. We are bound to face failures, opposition, unanswered prayers, where we will be mocked upon, made fun of. But God's word is very clear. He says, we lay those things aside, and looking unto Jesus, we run the race that is set before us. For we know who the author and finisher of our faith is. I could never go back and blame my brother and say, or my parents, they got me married and gave me so far away. No, it was not parents. It was not a brother. It was the Lord's doing. And so I think whatever we go through in life, to know that God is with us and to know that this is where God wants me to be. When God's work done at God's time, it will not lack any provision. So when God keeps us in His will, wherever He wants us to be, then He makes every provision. He made the provision for Ruth. It was a strange land she came to. She never knew what was awaiting her. She never knew if she would remarry again. That was not her intention, not her thought. She just followed her mother-in-law and committed herself to saying, your God is my God. Your people are my people. So from there on, her life of simple faith, it is a simple faith. It was not a complicated one with human knowledge. It was God-given wisdom. She simply said, your people are my people. Your God is my God. This is the commitment we come to. It says, entreat me not to leave thee, to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. Whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. So when that is the commitment we make, it doesn't spare us. No one it spares us. No one is spared from a life of trial, of difficulties, because that is precisely what God says. You will encounter, but remember, Hebrews 13:5, I have said, I will never leave thee, I will never forsake thee. And it's very clear. When that is the word that God gives us, He keeps His part of His covenant. When we keep our part of the covenant without questioning, when we submit to whatever He has for us, then for sure we have Him with us. Oftentimes we say, I can't go through it. Yes, it's true. You can't go through it. But when the Lord is with us, He goes through it with us. That is where the difference is. And so in almost coming to a conclusion, if there are any questions anyone would have, I have a couple of just a couple of minutes more where I would like to also challenge each one of us as we are going through this terrible COVID time. People call it terrible, but I'll tell you one thing. This last 1 year, it has been the greatest blessing for me, because I thought it's again the wilderness journey that the Lord is taking His children through. Social distancing, cut off from friends, cut off from fellowship, meeting people, which is so much a part of our life in living, especially when you live in a foreign country. You look forward very much to events where you say, oh, we're going to meet. But all those things had to be cut off this past 1 year. But I'll tell you, there has never been a greater blessing for me this past year when compared to the past 40 years. When I had no restrictions of movement or of social distancing, only this past 1 year. But in this past 1 year, I've experienced God's great hand of blessing, that I, who has retired now, I worked for the Austrian schools 30 years of my life here, retired as a teacher here for the government of Austria. But a very busy life, raising 3 children, had my career, had my contacts to church, to ministry, to everything. But this past year, and of course, having retired a couple of years back, I feel people say, oh, you get a retirement shock. Don't forget. So don't retire early. That's what we say here, at least in Central Europe. You work as long as you can. But to me, retirement was not a shock. I never felt bored at any time. My day is so full that God gives me opportunity after opportunity. From prayer cell, prayer groups, to sharing God's word, to counseling, and especially children, teenage children, the group that I had been a teacher, how to deal with teenagers. And my day is so full. Sometimes I can start off a day as early as 8 or 9 and go on till after 12 in the night. And I'm thankful to God for that, because with all this life of mine is meant to be used for the Lord. I don't believe in sitting, because oftentimes people have the fear retirement, it's dangerous because you're lonely, you're of no use to the society. That's the modern thinking. Oh, parents, elderly parents, just get rid of them. They're no use to society, no use to home. They can't cook and help us in cooking. We have to cook and feed them. No, that's not true. The Lord is so good. He says in the book of Deuteronomy, as thy days, so shall thy strength be. He gives us his strength. Not at one time, once a month, every day. And so it is, for me, the COVID time has been a time of great blessing. I've counseled many families, children, individuals, especially to sisters. I've been on Zoom for long hours, and I'm thankful to God for this great opportunity. I don't feel worthy in any way, but when God calls, he makes no mistake. I was mistaken that my calling to come to Austria was not right, because I had to leave my comfort zone, my lovely parents, my food where I ate, and I long for it even now. Of course, I find my ways of making and getting that food what I eat, but it's not the comfort of this material life, which is all. The Lord gives us his comfort, of course, but it is that through it, through all these different circumstances of our life, we see that the Lord is in it. And he definitely takes us through the times where we know that there is no way that we can be mistaken that this was not from God. Going through times of suffering and difficulties, there were many people who said, maybe it was a mistake that you are here. But I had never looked upon it as a mistake. And I always said, in God's divine order, there are no accidents that can happen. There can't be any mishaps. And when he leads, then he leads, when you let him lead. According to Psalm 32:8, there are a few things he says, I will instruct you. And from instructions on, it says, I will teach you. From there on, it says, I will guide you. And from there on, his eye is upon me. You see, he instructs me, he teaches me, and he guides me with his eye. So when we let the Lord do that, then we don't see a loss in any of our circumstances or situations in life. That is what I have. The last year has been a challenging year for many people here, not only in Austria, around the world. I've had great opportunity to communicate to sisters from all parts that I know of from India. In fact, today the day has been so full for me. I never thought that it would be like this. I started my day today with fasting and prayer from 8 till 1 in the afternoon. I came back, broke my fast, got ready for the meeting. After this, a very lonely friend of mine has invited us for food and begged me to stay with her till 10:30 in the night. I said, okay. She's a widow. I said, I'll do that. That'll make you happy. But I have to come back at 11 to go for a meeting from 12 midnight until 2 in the morning, a sister's meeting in Canada. So these are ways and means how God, is so wonderful that He leads us and He takes over charge of our lives. He guides us, He instructs us, and He gives us His strength.